record, speaker view, and my sheet. Okay, so on Tuesday, we did our first small group work. When you take CPS 162, you're going to be doing large group work. And we may even do one in here as well, where we have a large group. But I put you into small groups and I jump around the rooms and I watch and I observe. And some groups are much more efficient and faster than other groups. Some groups, they all do their own thing. And I don't really think you're getting the benefit of working in a small group. And there are some groups that just take off. And my example from taking off is over half the groups had that. And you all know what I'm talking about, because 4/3 is an integer divided by an integer, and that did in fact give you 1. So that was a useless statement. And once we brought that up, folks decided, yeah, that's we needed to make that a double and go from there. So that leads me into the first thing. When you're working in a small group, how do you have, okay, we got a program, we're going to attack it. How do you attack it? Well, your traditional way is hopefully one person's typing and the other ones are contributing. Well, in my ideal world, I'd like you to see somebody or the whole group or whatever talk about the test data first. Because if you would have made test data for this program where you did the volume of a sphere, something wouldn't have been right. But so many groups did it, typed in a number, got an answer, and moved on. And what's my saying for that? The surgery was a success, but the patient died because the answer was wrong. Patient is no good, you know? So the surgery was great. You wrote a program and everything, but you're a quack of a doctor because you fixed the, you didn't fix it right. So maybe, you know, when you start working on it, somebody will volunteer to be, I don't know, what we might call the note taker, or they could be the person doing the typing is basically what I'm at. So I'll get ready and I'll go load up the program. I'll type in, if this was a Java program, the public static void main, and start doing the braces while the two of you start talking about what might be good test data. Somebody may have to work on some kind of calculation. I shouldn't talk and write at the same time, because I know there's something going on and I can't use math.ceil. So we may have to look something up that works for math.ceil, and somebody could be designated as the Google person when the time comes. Another thing that needed looked up the other day was how to clear screen. And, you know, maybe somebody, yeah, I'll take care of that. I'll go find that real quick while we're doing a bunch of different stuff. So did anybody find out how to do a clear screen? Did you put it in your notes? Was it uploaded? If you didn't get all of your notes done, did you go find one of the ones that was posted on the discussion board and say, hey, I like what, there's the answer. Oh, that's how they did that. Okay, we looked at the question a little bit different, but those things are posted. And, you know, a lot of times this is going to be the difference between someone who gets an 87 in the class and someone who goes and dots the I's and crosses the T's and looks at all of the stuff on the discussion board, and they pull out a 91 instead. And it might be the difference between an A and a B in the course. So when you go to small groups, you know, I'm looking for a little more organization skills instead of me showing up, seeing 4 screens, no one's talking, everyone's doing their own typing. Now, you may get in a group that's just how you want to work, and okay. And if you don't like that and you want to be in a more active group, you come back to the main group, let me know, and I'll assign you somewhere else. There'll be days where you're sitting there, all 4 of you, boom, I'll just disband your group and send you somewhere else, because it's supposed to be an active learning kind of thing. One of the things we don't want, and I haven't seen it, we don't want any dictators. I'll do the typing, I'll do the talking, everybody sit and watch and everybody else in the group's like, well, I'm going to ignore those. And we don't want any freeloaders. Everybody knows what I mean by freeloader. You're not in the main class. It's easier to speak up in a group of 4 if you're not sure what your answer is than a class of 19. So don't be a freeloader. Don't just turn your computer video off and start working on your next class. It's not going to benefit you. It's not going to benefit the group. But if there's ever a time, let me know. I'll move people to different groups. I don't care. I want it to be active and everything going super well. Questions or comments? Cool. Moving on to chapter 3, which is just what you finished up on. Are there any questions on anything you did in chapter 3? All right, so 16 out of 18 of you did the code listings for today. I have 2 students who didn't do the code listings for today. I have a couple didn't do the last code listing, which was a real bite in the elbow because, yeah, that was worth 16 points. And the one today is worth 10 points. So a couple people were falling behind point-wise quickly. And you know who you are, but 16 out of 18 of you have them done. That's great. You're looking at chapter 4 going, I understand all the concepts in chapter 4. This is great. Just like I understood all the concepts in chapter 2. All right. So let's see what I have. First thing I have a note is don't forget about your algorithms. They are in fact due tonight. Decision making. When you did your code listings and decision making, you started out with, oh yeah, I remember this from Java. The relational operators, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, equal to, pow. And there'll be lots and lots of discussion about equal to, because some things we can compare, but it only compares the addresses. And there are things we can't compare. And then finally, the not equals. And we learned a little bit more about the not when we got down to the 3 logical operators, not, and or. Test question, there it was, 8 points. If you had me for CPS 121. What are the relational operators? What do? They compare expressions. Now we're back to our math talk. Compares expressions, result Boolean. Cool, happy, all good. Logical operators. They compare Booleans and give a Boolean. They compare Boolean and give a Boolean. So if I magically went to this page, pow, I'm on page 192 in your textbooks. And I put a little thing in here called Naxo. Naxo is old school for me because we used to have exclusive OR, but we don't anymore. But this was the order of our logical operators, not, and, exclusive OR, and or. Not would get done first. Okay, so I've always had students do Naxo. And if you take CPS 230 from me, you're going to see we're going to do a little more in depth with all these logic operators. All right, the first group, there's 4 of them there. Again, if you are on gallery view, you will not be able to see it very well. You may want to go to speaker view or have your own book. Of those first 4, which one is true, or which ones?
Only the second one.
I agree. Can anybody concur?
Yeah, it would be the second one.
Only the second one. Okay. The next group of 4, which one or which ones in that group are true?
Both of them.
There's 4 of them in there.
Oh,
The first 3.
sorry.
You
The
the
first
last one.
3, correct. You are correct. The first 3 are in fact true. The last 2, which one is true?
The second one.
Second one, right? The not of false evaluates out as true. Oh, let's see. Letter A. Bless you. A equal 4 or B greater than 2. How does that evaluate?
True.
True. The left side is false. The right side is true, but it's an or statement. It becomes true. Good, Dorian. B. 6 is less than or equal to C, and A is greater than 3.
False.
False. The left side is true, but the right side is false, and it's an and statement, and they both have to be true. C.
True.
True, yeah.
True. Yep. True and with true is going to give me true. I actually just went through my book and erased all the answers. So I'm not writing them in there because then I'd have to erase them again. Did we do D? We're on D. Hey, Darren's in the house.
That's
I'm
true.
here.
D is true is what I'm getting. And yes, A is greater than or equal to -1. Ored with, we don't care because that left side is true and it really doesn't matter. And finally, what is E?
True again.
True.
That is true again. Very good. Questions? Got those and knocked those out pretty quick. Okay, uh-oh. Everything's moving around on me. There we go. Relational operators, logical operators, we're all happy. Now, why did we learn those? Because we wanted to jump into if statements. And the first part of if statements, we looked at the flow charts back in 121, and we basically had something called a single alternative. If it's true, do this. If it's not true, we just move on. And it was given by if, and then a set of braces. If there was only one line of code, I didn't need the braces. If it was compound, I needed. Double alternative. If this is true, do this, else do this. And again, if it was a single line, braces would be optional. So you start to hear the term single alternative and double alternative. Down at the bottom, don't confuse equals with the assignment operator. That will happen. If it hasn't already, that will in fact happen. Shaka Khan. See what we have going on this page. Then after we did our if statements, we jumped into a whole bunch of nested if statements. And that would be where inside the body, the compound statement, after an if, we might have ifs inside of there. And looks like I made a note, one of the code listings you typed in had an example of the nested if statements. For alignment purposes, we had something called if, else, if statements, followed by an else at the end. It was a default. According to my notes here, you did code listing 413, which should have had something that worked that way. Strings. When we compared strings in Java, we did equal, equal. What was being compared?
ASCII
The-
values, right?
No, not the ASCII values. Somebody
The
else?
memory address.
Yeah, the memory address. Because remember, the name of a string is a memory address. That ties into chapter 9 in our textbook when we started working with addresses and how we were able to have a pointer and say the name of an array was a pointer. Same kind of deal is going to work with a string. So what did we have to do in Java? Well, we did something like string1 dot equals string2, where we passed in an argument to the method equals that was in the string class. We would get a return of a true or false. My question is, in C++, do I need to use the dot equals, or will this do the character comparison?
I think it does the character by character comparison.
It will, in fact. So C++ gives us a big old yay, because we can go back to using the equal operator for strings. And we'll eventually talk about something called C strings, and we'll get a little more depth into how a string works and how old school strings used to work. Finally, we had switch statements, okay? Inside of my switch statements, I had to have a data type, and there's actually a name for it. It's called an ordinal data type. And an ordinal data type is one that has a unique predecessor and a successor. For example, if the data type was an int, what comes before 3? 2. What comes after 3? 4. What comes before true?
False.
What comes after true?
False.
Right. Chars, we know we have 256 of them. And when I get to the end, it wraps around to the beginning, just like the Boolean wraps around, just like int wraps around. If I went past the range of int and added 1, it would wrap around into the negatives. Doubles, well, I have that crossed out because what comes after 4.1? Is it 4.2? Is it 4.11? Is it 4.10? What? We don't know. So that's why we can't use it here. It doesn't match this ordinal data type. Switch statement, we started with braces, we ended with braces. We had a case followed by the case label in here, so it knew which one to use. We had an optional default. And a lot of you are going to remember, that break statement on the quiz in our Java class, in the programs. If you forgot a break, it dribbled down. Sometimes you wanted to do that, but we needed a break to break out past the right brace. Questions? All right, so what I want you to do now is write down page 222, 2, 5, 7, 8, and 15. Conceptually, you understand this chapter of the textbook. Practice-wise, you need to practice it. You need to practice the C++ coding. So you get better at the errors, you get better at the reserved words. So I have 5 programs that I'm going to put you in your groups, and I want your groups to write. Are there any questions?